Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lytham Partners Spring 2022 Investor Conference. My name is Adam Lowensteiner, Vice President of Lytham Partners. Thank you for joining us here for this panel discussion today titled Improving Patient Care Through New Innovations. We are joined by three executives from three great companies from the industry to get some insights today on how they see the space. I've gathered some topics of interest for investors and hope to learn greatly from our panelists today. Joining us today are Lisa Crossley, CEO of Reliq Health Technologies, Manny Krakaris, CEO of Augmedix, and Karim Nasser, CEO of Mednow. Before we begin the discussion, I'd like to have each of you introduce yourselves and provide a brief description on your company. Lisa, we could start with you, then Manny, then Karim.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. My name is Lisa Crossley. I'm the CEO of Reliq Health Technologies. We are a software as a service company, healthcare technology space, and we're focused on improving health outcomes for chronic disease patients. Our target patient population is the roughly 60 million Medicare and Medicaid patients who have qualifying chronic conditions, and we help their clinicians connect to them in the home and provide care virtually in the community to prevent hospitalizations.
Manny?
Thanks, Adam. I'm Manny Krakaris. I'm the CEO of Augmedix. Augmedix came into being to address an acute and growing problem in healthcare. That's the unprecedented level of doctor burnout in the U.S. A major contributing factor to doctor burnout is the fact that doctors are spending a third of their day at a computer doing administrative work rather than interacting directly with patients. We relieve the doctor of this administrative burden by offering a virtual documentation solution that is faster, better, and much cheaper than when they do it themselves, so they can focus their attention on what matters most, which is patient care. The TAM we're going after is about $6 billion in the US. And as some of you may know, Augmedix listed on NASDAQ last October, and we trade under the symbol AUGX.
Karim. You're on mute. There we go.
I wanted to say that it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Adam. Mednow is solving a $50 billion problem of retail pharmacy. We're doing that through a national digital pharmacy that provides convenience, technology to pharmacy users that allows them to access a pharmacist by a simple text message or a video call. We own and operate all of our pharmacies, which means we can support our patients coast to coast today in Canada with the ability to do same-day delivery in Toronto, Vancouver, and Halifax, with Calgary, Montreal, and Winnipeg coming to national status as well by the summer of this year. We're very excited about this, and we're projecting revenues of $50 million by the end of this year. Our goal is to go beyond just pharmacy. We're also a healthcare technology provider. So that means we have telemedicine services, mental health, nutrition, and many other ancillary services that allow us to really encompass the patient and bring them into Mednow as a user of multiple healthcare services, which is really the goal, holistic care. Again, thanks for having me, Adam.
Sure. Thanks for being here today, everybody. Thank you for that, Karim. Now let's get into some topics of interest. Starting off, what specific problem does your technology or company solve? And again, Lisa, I'll begin with you.
Sure. So we're addressing the $100 billion chronic disease management market in the US. And our primary goal is to improve health outcomes for this patient population. So these are typically elderly patients who have multiple chronic diseases like asthma, kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, congestive heart failure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And they're responsible on a day-to-day basis for managing their own conditions in the home. And less than 50% of these patients take their medication as prescribed. So we're able to monitor their vital signs using very easy to use hardware. We're hardware agnostic, so really whatever the clinician specifies for that particular patient. But we can reach patients in rural and remote communities where there isn't conventional internet internet access. We can connect to those devices over the cellular, and we can use cellular network. And we can use various devices that monitor medication adherence and compliance. So we're able to reduce hospitalizations in that patient population by over 80%, which ultimately will save Medicare and Medicaid billions of dollars, but will also really improve quality of life for these patients and their family caregivers.
Manny, how about you? What specific problem does your technology or company solve?
Well, we're focused on doctor burnout in the U.S. Currently, that's a $4.6 billion cost to the industry. But what's not spoken to enough is the loss of productivity that is incurred by the industry when doctors devote a significant part of their day, a third of their day, on administrative tasks rather than seeing patients. So the challenge that doctors have is that the medical note, which is where they spend a third of their day in front of a computer working on, it's been the bane of clinicians for years. It's complex. The software systems that have been developed to enter the requisite information, those systems are unwieldy, and it is a very time-consuming task. It extends the doctor's workday well into evenings and on weekends, and it's taking a huge toll in terms of burnout and doctor productivity, as I mentioned earlier. Moreover, doctors oftentimes, and you may have experienced this yourself, when you're visiting your doctor, they try to manage documentation while they're also interacting with the patient, and that detracts from the quality of that interaction, and it leads to patient dissatisfaction. So we try to remove that friction in that exchange by observing that interaction in the background virtually so that the doctor can have a natural exchange with the patient.
Kareem, how about you? What specific problem does your company or technology solve?
So healthcare in Canada is worth about $260 billion, and yet it doesn't enjoy any of the key conveniences that other industries like it or even smaller in size have. We're really coming at it through pharmacy. So specifically, the ability to completely virtualize the pharmacy experience. Today, through Mednow's platform, you can speak to a pharmacist right over our app, whether it's by text or video call or calling our national call center. The other aspect of this is really utilizing technology that allows this pharmacy to do a lot more than it can do if it was just kind of stuck in that brick and mortar mode. Of course, the primary market of pharmacy is sitting in these brick and mortar pharmacies, and to bring them into a digital realm where everything can be done virtually, your medications get delivered. That's kind of a key problem that we're solving. And then finally, because now pharmacists are working out of places that have high automation, so our pharmacies are built with high volume and automation in mind, these pharmacists can now focus on the clinical aspects of their scope, which is something that they don't get to do a lot of when they're sitting inside of a walk-in pharmacy. So all of this collectively is about a world where you wake up not feeling well, you get on a virtual telemedicine app or hours if you're looking for our service, to get the pharmacy of Mednow to deliver the medication the same day. You've never had to leave your house. It's a very convenient and kind of where pharmacy needed to be, and we're happy to be part of it.
Great. Each of you play a different area in improving patient care. What are the alternatives to what you bring to the table, and why are your offerings superior? Manny, I will begin with you.
Okay, well, in our industry, the predominant means by which doctors handle documentation is the do-it-yourself approach. That is not working for the industries for the reasons I outlined earlier. So what has evolved are some outsourced solutions, the first of which that came to fore was the dictation solution, where doctors actually dictate the encounter word for word following their exchange or interaction with the patient. The problem with that is it doesn't really save much time for the doctor, because what you're doing is really replacing a keyboard interface with a voice interface. The doctor still has to undertake an additional action to create the medical note. So that led to the development of solutions that rely on the ambient or natural conversation between a doctor and a patient as the input for creating the medical note. And that is the class of solutions that Augmedix offers.
Kareem, How about you? What are the alternatives to what you bring to the table and why your offerings are superior?
Yeah, so it's about virtualizing that pharmacy experience. Today, to see a pharmacist is a call or a walk down to the block, and you're waiting in a busy place where privacy is really harder to gain because it normally is a bit of a convenience store in the front. And the focus is about dispensing medications, not so much about sitting there and kind of talking through drug therapy. So with us being always connected, always convenient, we're about creating pharmacy into a navigation center for the healthcare system that we have here in Canada, which can tend to be complex. So whether it's about knowing whether you should go see a doctor or talking through a side effect you're experiencing from a medication that you just received, or even lifestyle questions like health, healthy eating. We have our own supplement vitamin offering that's called Total Health. Not a lot of pharmacies have that. We really went out of our way to kind of complement all aspects of patient care that can be executed through pharmacy. That's really what's exciting about being part of this panel, because a lot of the problems that everyone else is solving in this care is about patient care. It's about making somebody really capitalize and access care in a better way than they have as far as they have been in the Canadian healthcare.
And Lisa, what alternatives do you bring to the table, and why are your offerings superior?
Yeah. So our platform, is very comprehensive. So it doesn't just offer that remote patient monitoring, but it also offers behavioral health integration, which is care coordination for patients with mental health or addiction issues, transitional care management for patients coming home from skilled nursing facilities, principal care management for specialists to virtually manage their patients. And so the current standard of care in most of those arenas is either the patient providing their own, medication compliance and vitals collection and tracking and recognizing early warning signs on their own, which is a very inefficient, ineffective process, or it doesn't exist at all. So with, for example, behavioral health integration, that kind of care coordination between the different members of the care team would normally happen through something like a bunch of doctors faxing one another, and that's often doesn't even happen. So, we're replacing in some cases an existing workflow that's very manual and that's very reliant on a 75-year-old sick patient taking full responsibility for managing multiple complex chronic conditions in their own home. In other cases, there really is no other existing workflow right now. And so what we're doing is bringing in new workflows that Medicare and Medicaid have said will help support some of these patients who are at the most risk in the community and make it very simple for their clinicians. So they're not having to constantly triage every patient, but a lot of the workflow is automated by our platform, which makes it easier for the physician or the home health agency to provide care to the right patient at the right time.
Thank you. So COVID-19, let's talk about that a little bit. Hopefully it's really behind us, but still it had a major impact in the way patient care has developed and the way some of these innovations that you're discussing are being embraced. Can you each please maybe discuss your thoughts on wasted spending in the healthcare system, and what are you working to alleviate those issues and improving? Oh, I'm sorry, that's a long question. But I was going back to COVID-19. What effect did COVID-19 have on your business, and what can we expect in a post-COVID world, especially when it comes to improved patient care? So let's go to Kareem.
Thanks, Adam. So COVID-19, with all of the cons that it came with, it definitely had one major pro, which is making digital health much more commonplace and much more accepted. So for being a virtual pharmacy, it just so happens that pharmacy is one of those aspects of healthcare that can be really quite well virtualized. Again, I go back to being able to text your pharmacist, having video calls with pharmacists. We deliver all of our medications. So all of that was definitely available in some limited forms prior to COVID, but COVID really pushed people towards the idea of consuming their healthcare digitally. And that lines up perfectly with what we're building because, again, that's really the future of healthcare. And we're just really excited to already see the progress that we've been able to make in proving that people want a virtual pharmacy, given our 5-star rating.
And Manny, let's ask the question to you. What can we expect in a post-COVID world? What effect did it have on your business, and how will it now COVID, improve patient care?
Well, I just want to echo what Kareem just said, that initially the pandemic had a profoundly negative impact on the U.S. healthcare industry in general, as healthcare providers scrambled to develop appropriate safety protocols for on-site visits and before telemedicine was fully incorporated in their workflows. But by the fall of 2020, patient visits largely returned to their pre-pandemic levels, and that was reflected in our own growth rate. The pandemic essentially had an interesting and profound impact on the industry in general. It created the opportunity for virtual solutions such as ours, such as those offered by Kareem's company, to demonstrate their efficacy and scalability. And now that the genie is out of the bottle, so to speak, I don't see how enterprises are going to go back to the old ways of doing things.
At least what impact did COVID-19 have on your business? And in the post-COVID world, how should we look at that, and especially when it comes to improved patient care?
Yeah, so throughout 2020 and the first half of 2021, as the vaccine rollout was getting started, and we were really seeing that clinicians were primarily focused on providing acute care to COVID patients. So, their chronic disease patients kind of got left by the wayside. They didn't have, the time to focus on proactive preventative care. And the chronic disease patients were kind of the last ones you wanted to bring into the office. You didn't want to risk exposing them to COVID because they were the ones who were likely to have outcomes if they did catch COVID. In the second half of 2021, we saw a lot of clinicians who had been forced by the pandemic to get comfortable with the concept of virtual care, and really turning back to those chronic condition patients and saying, a lot of them have really fared poorly in terms of control of their chronic disease during the pandemic. And so we have to do something very aggressively to get those patients better managed in the community. And certainly Medicare and Medicaid did their part by significantly increasing the reimbursement levels and for a variety of different virtual care programs that are enabled by our platform during the pandemic, during those 2 years. So there's now, a really significant market pull for our platform and our technology. And there's a compelling value proposition for clinicians because they can make an additional $400 per patient per month in new revenue by deploying our platform through the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements. But I think the real fundamental shift for us was it forced even some of these older clinicians who were very set in their ways and were interested in digital health or using virtual care. It made them get comfortable with it just by necessity. And so that's, I think, been a big reduction in barriers to adoption for us.
So now it's the question I was going to ask. Cost in the healthcare system, they're a big reason why innovations are being embraced. Can you each please discuss your thoughts on wasted spending in the healthcare industry and how you're working to alleviate those issues, but not by doing so to improve patient care as well? So Manny, I'll begin with you.
Sure. So the U.S. healthcare industry, as I alluded to earlier, is suffering from a chronic shortage of clinicians. The problem has become so acute that many systems have resorted to hiring temporary nurses, for example, to help alleviate the strains of being understaffed. And they're paying them as much as $275 an hour. To us, it makes no sense for the industry to deploy its scarcest and most expensive resource, its people, to do administrative tasks that can be outsourced for $30 an hour or less. The reason why we're able to do it is because for that cost is because we developed some very sophisticated and proprietary automation technology to make the process of creating the note very, very efficient. Not only is our outsourced solution a fraction of the cost of doing documentation in-house, it also frees up doctors to spend more time seeing patients, which of course has a positive impact on the industry's top line. So you can reduce costs and increase your top line by adopting an outsourced virtual solution such as ours.
And Lisa, what are your thoughts on wasted spending in the healthcare system and how you're working to alleviate those issues to improve patient care?
Yeah, so the patient population, we focus on the chronic disease patients. We refer to them as the super users of the healthcare system. Over 70% of all healthcare costs in any of the developed nations, so Canada as well as the US, come from the chronic disease patient population. So, really doing anything else that we've done in healthcare, things like consolidating hospitals and making fewer beds available, all of that's really just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not going to have a meaningful impact. So the only way to really reduce healthcare spending effectively and reduce waste is by doing something that will keep those chronic disease patients out of the hospital. Every time they're admitted, because they are typically older and have multiple chronic diseases, they're usually admitted to the intensive care unit, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars per week for them to stay in the hospital environment. If you can provide simple, in-the-home and proactive preventative interventions like we do for $40 per patient per month, which is fully covered by Medicare and Medicaid, you can reduce those hospitalizations by over 80%. So it really translates to a very significant cost savings, but it also is better for the patient. So it improves patient care, it improves the burden on their informal caregivers, their families, and I think it is the future of healthcare. We have to start doing things differently. My parents are both physicians, and they always say we do a really good job now. They're retired now, relative to when they started practicing, of keeping patients alive longer, so we can extend life by an extra decade or two. But we don't give patients good quality of life in those last 2 decades, and that's because we're not focused enough on the proactive preventative approach. So that's something I really, was quite surprised, but really commend Medicare and Medicaid for taking such a progressive approach and really putting a significant budget towards funding this kind of proactive preventative virtual care, because it does have a very meaningful effect on the bottom line, but it also has a really positive effect on patient quality of life and health outcome.
And Kareem, can you discuss your thoughts on wasted spending in the healthcare system and how you're working to alleviate those issues by improving patient care?
Yeah, for me, it's quite simple. It comes down to adherence. Adherence being taking medications as prescribed, and your full dose as the doctor recommended. 50% of people that are taking chronic medications today are not taking them as prescribed, and that is costing private and public payers billions and billions of dollars. So the idea of being able to support somebody who's taking multiple medications and quite regularly on being able to take that medication as prescribed means they're going to be not paying for drugs that are not used or are wasted. Our ability to do pretty much everything from having automatic refills, so your medications arrive to you before the day the refill is due, as an example, or all the way to actually having a robot sit on your kitchen counter and dispense your medications as needed and when needed, is how we're solving that problem. So again, it's about using technology to solve for what is a significant problem, being adherence. And not only does the patient get better, but the payers appreciate that their money is being well spent.
So everyone here, all of your technologies should be collecting lots of data. How do you plan on using that data? And over time, that data should help improve patient care, correct? Kareem, I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. The data isn't just there to be kept and stored on, and not necessarily any kind of coherent conclusion can be brought up for us. For Mednow, it's about a unified medical record. We actually look at pharmacy as the hub of healthcare. A lot of the information that pharmacy has, such as what medications you're taking, so therefore what diseases you might be ailing from, lifestyle concerns, really an easily accessible place to learn about patient outcomes. And of course, there's many more things we could do, like bringing in remote patient monitoring that uses devices like Bluetooth-enabled blood pressure monitors and glucometers. All that information can fit nicely to be brought back into a pharmacy and to be really effective in now seeing how can we adjust therapy, what can we really do to confirm that outcomes are being met as expected. That's how our data utilization plan is looking like for today. Of course, it's a lot of work. It's going to be a tall order to really get to this place where payers start appreciating the stuff as they did in the U.S. already. So in the U.S., RMP, or remote patient monitoring, is a reimbursable service. We're still not there with Canada, but this is the kind of changes that the regulatory and payers need to do in order to permit data to really empower healthcare.
And Lisa, let's go to you. How do you plan on using the data, and over time that data should help improve patient care, correct?
That's right. So we keep a copy of every piece of patient data that we handle. We anonymize and de-identify it, and it goes into a separate database. Over time, so probably middle of next year-ish, we will have enough patient records and enough history, so have been following those patients for a long enough period of time that that data will be incredibly valuable for pharmaceutical companies, for governments, for research institutions. And so we'll be able to license that data to those groups. That will be a very rich data set. Historically, any data that was collected in the home was patient self-reported and therefore subjective and of limited value. We're collecting data directly from Class 2 medical devices, so it's objective data that's very valuable. And unlike the data you collect in clinical trials, where you're really looking at one indication and one medication and trying to keep the patients from being on really anything else, these are patients who may be taking a dozen different medications a day. They may have 5 different chronic diseases and also have eczema or gout or cancer. And so you're really getting a very rich data set that's looking at the complex interplay of multiple medications, multiple chronic diseases, for an actual real live patient. So that data will be very unique in the marketplace and very high value financially, economically. But it will also be really valuable to pharmaceutical companies and governments to help guide, development of new therapeutics, to help identify interactions between medications, and to examine, which patients fare best on which therapies, so that will help guide prescribing and treatment going forward.
And Manny, how do you plan on using the data? And over time, how should that data help improve patient care?
Well, Augmedix to date has generated well over 5 million medical notes, and we're adding that base at a rate of over 40,000 a week. We currently use the data to make our services better, particularly in the areas of automation. Through machine learning, we continuously increase the amount of the medical note that's automated. Data is also used to provide useful insights to our healthcare customers that they don't necessarily have access to today, things relating to population health, for example. And then finally, we also use data to drive ancillary services such as pre-charting and coding. These are essential tasks that all healthcare providers must undertake.
So I think we have time for one more question here. Can each of you tell me something that either your customer base or your investor base may not fully appreciate about either your company or your technology offering? Lisa, I'll begin with you.
I think in terms of our customer base, and we are seeing significant market pull, but there's still less than 5% of the eligible patient population are taking advantage of any kind of virtual care. That's not up to the patient, it's up to their clinician. But I think because Medicare and Medicaid have really only had billing codes for most of these services for less than 4 years, and initially the reimbursement levels were quite low, that there's been relatively little uptake. So, for us, it's not that we're, missionaries out there. We don't, given the current level of reimbursement from Medicare and Medicaid, we're not having to educate customers the way that we used to. But we definitely, we have a huge market that's relatively untapped in front of us. And so we're responding as quickly as we can to that. But it's definitely a market in its infancy. We are fortunate to have kind of established ourselves as the gold standard for the community care space, having built the platform very specifically to deal with these elderly patients who are being cared for in their home and may not have conventional internet access and other infrastructure in their community. But it's something that we want certainly to see significantly more penetration of our solution, because it does significantly improve health outcomes and reduce healthcare spending.
Let's go to Manny. Manny, is there something in your customer base or your investor base that they may not fully appreciate about either your company or your technology offering that you'd like to share with us?
Sure, Adam. So we currently serve 5 of the top 10 U.S. healthcare enterprises. We're one of very few companies in our space that has any meaningful penetration of these large health systems. Moreover, we're one of even fewer companies that offer both asynchronous and synchronous real-time virtual solutions. Synchronous solutions are really difficult to do from a technical and logistical perspective. That's why there's so few companies that try to do it. but they are very valuable to the healthcare provider. And finally, our platform architecture and operational infrastructure are highly flexible. And that flexibility has enabled us to offer the broadest suite of services to accommodate the widest range of clinician workflows in various health settings and specialties in the industry. We currently cover more than 35 specialties, over 50 EHRs, and we're the only company that's able to do that.
And Kareem, can you tell us something that either your customer base or your investor base may not fully appreciate about either your company or your technology offering?
So a lot of people think we're just an app or a delivery service for pharmacies. It's not true at all. We're actually a national digital pharmacy. That means we have full access to that $47 billion retail market. By being able to own and operate these pharmacies, we have the entirety of the value chain from the moment of purchasing a drug from a wholesaler or from a manufacturer, all the way to delivering it by hand to a patient, where a Mednow staff person is there, in a branded outfit and car to really show what Mednow is all about. Our ability to do that coast to coast in Canada is another key thing that we are making sure people are aware of now. As I said, we're live in Ontario, British Columbia, and Nova Scotia, with Quebec, Manitoba, and Alberta coming live literally within the couple of months that are coming here, which means we're going to be able to service that Canadian customer with that same day delivery in major metropolitan cities. And it's something that is really not comparable to any other offering in the country. So we're excited to be pioneering it, and we're hoping that people will see us in terms of customers, of course, to try us out and use us, and for investors to take a chance at an undervalued stock that today is trading at cash. And for us, that's something that is already attractive as it is, given what we've built in terms of hard assets, but certainly for the growth that is coming, that should contribute tremendously to our enterprise value. Thanks again for having me on this panel, Adam.
Sure. Kareem, Manny, Lisa, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today. And thank you for everyone for listening and participating. If any investors or listeners out there would like to get in touch with any of our panel companies, please feel free to reach out to myself or any member of the Lytham Partners team. Thanks again, and everybody have a great day and a great conference.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.